13 in St. Louis, Missouri, entered service in San Antonio, Texas in 1914, and that's no relation to that little steam tractor we just passed. If you weren't paying attention, you didn't miss anything. Anyway, the Trolley, this old 300, spent about 30 years in San Antonio, Texas, and they eventually got to the point where other means of transportation were more profitable for the city. So it fell into some disrepair. It was still owned by the San Antonio Museum, and at one point it was a chicken coop. Another point, a lady lived in it for several years. It ended up in Portland, Oregon. In Portland, Oregon, it ran from Lake Oswego to downtown Portland for just a few years. Moved to Central Oregon, and people have been trying to figure out where it is. I searched Google, and I can't find it yet. Anyway, the city of Astoria, around 1998, decided that these train tracks that we're on should be used for something, hopefully something that a tourist would like. So they went to the Gales Creek Trolley Museum and fell in love with old 300, which didn't look like much, and brought it here. After 3,500 plus volunteer hours, the trolley looks similar to this, not quite as nice because we put a lot of time and effort into it since then. But we started running in 1999, and we've been running ever since. It's a volunteer organization. Bob and myself, Fred, are both volunteers. And there's about 40 of us in our organization that run this trolley. And we really appreciate you riding with us. And we really enjoy the fact that we can tell you a little bit about Astoria, which has a lot of history. Some of the history, we'll start with John Jacob Astor, sitting in New York, realized there was a lot of furs in this country, decided, well, I'm going to send an expedition out there to see if it's possible to open up a fur trading business. So he sent two expeditions out, one by land and one by sea. The sea went down around South America and came up the west side of the coast of America. And the land one roughly followed Lewis and Clark's trails, but not exactly. Stopping here at 3rd Street, passing the condominium. That condominium, as Bob indicated, wasn't full until well after 1972 when it was built. Anyway, the land expedition had a lot of problems, not just with Indians, but with weather and various things. Remember, there was no highways at that time, so you couldn't get on Highway 84 and make it out to the west coast. It wasn't exactly that way. There was a lot of trees in the way, there was a lot of rivers to cross, no bridges, and the Columbia River at that time was nothing but a bunch of rapids. But they made it out here, but the sea expedition made it first by about 3 months. Stopping here at 6th Street, this dock you see on the left that there's nothing left on had 23 businesses at one time and a large restaurant, and decided that 2010 wasn't its year because late in 2010 there was a fire. And they took all those businesses and that restaurant out, and the only thing you see left was this deck here. The lookout was maintained by the Astoria Parks. It's one of their smaller parks in the city. Anyway, in 1811, the expedition from John Jacob Astor and the sea came to this location and built Fort Astoria. Well, you remember that Fort Astoria in 1811 was secure. However, in 1812 they got wind of the fact that there was a British war going on with America. And they decided, well, something's got to be done here because a British ship could come in and take us, and they named this as Britain's Commonwealth. Well, what they did is they sold it to a Canadian outfit, and when the British ship did come and saw the Canadian flag, it didn't do anything, left them alone. Anyway, that fort that they sold to the Canadians was named Fort George, after King George at that time. And we're going to get somebody else on here, and I'll continue my dissertation in a minute. Where the Fort Astoria was renamed Fort George, and it stayed that way for roughly 30 years. At the end of that time, the Americans bought it back, renamed it Fort Astoria, and the rest, as they say, is history. Of course, it was history in 1811 anyway. The area of Astoria to our right was all the Columbia River. The Columbia River went up about 2 to 3 blocks to our right. It was all under water, and all of the buildings, the businesses and whatnot, were on piers, similar to the buildings you see on our left. I'll continue this also. Being under us and off to the land side by about 2 to 3 blocks. And in 1922, Astoria had its second big fire. 1880 was the first, and the second one took out 30 square blocks of the downtown area of Astoria to our right. The city fathers said, you know, we're not going to build these houses and businesses and whatnot on piers anymore. We're going to bring in land. We're going to bring in dirt and rocks and whatever it takes to make this all just land. So the land that you walk on right now in Astoria is man-made. It was not natural, but it did the trick because fighting fires now is a lot safer. Opening in the dock here on the left, that's where the ferries used to come from Washington and drop off people and pick up people and take them back to Washington before the Astoria Negra Bridge was finished in 1966. Coming up on our left is the bar pilot's offices. It turns out there's two pilots on the river. One is the bar pilot that brings the ships from the Pacific Ocean to the Columbia River and back. There's the River Pilot Association, which takes it from this area all the way to Portland, which is about 100 miles. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to get there. The reason they anchor here is very important. It's free. If they were to go to Longview or Portland and anchor in those areas, it would cost them up to $1,000 a night. So they stay here and wait until their pier or their slip opens up, and it takes them, like I said, about 6 to 8 hours to get there.
Wow, 6 to 8 hours. I would sign up for that.
One of the finest marine museums on the West Coast, and that includes San Diego and Seattle. We're a authorized Coast Guard city. I think there's number 13, actually number 12, there's 13 of us. Coming up on our right, you see a ship that was donated by the bar pilots. This was in service for roughly 30 years, and they decided to upgrade, which they've done with the Columbia and the Astoria harbor boats. That orange boat you see on the back of this Peacock is the daughter boat that will be launched, and the pilot will jump on, and that will take him to the ship or pick him up at the ship and bring him back to the Peacock. They did that for years. Now they use something called a helicopter. This area here was Scow Bay before the fire in 1922. After they filled in Astoria, they decided to fill in Scow Bay also, because west side was Uniontown and east side was Upper Town, and to get back and forth you needed a boat. Now you could get across by land, but it was sometimes easier to just take a boat over. But when they filled in Astoria's downtown area, they also filled in Scow Bay. This little pond we see on the right is Mill Pond, and up until about 1999 it was an active mill. It sat dormant for probably about 10 years before Astoria City decided to do something about this. So they cleaned it all up, the pond, and made this a subdivision for upscale housing. They still have a craftsman look, however, to maintain the era that Astoria is trying to depict. The old red building you see up on the left, the dilapidated building, looks like it should just come down, and it probably will at one time. But back in 2007, there was hurricane winds over 100 miles an hour for about 3 days, and took the third floor off of that building, along with some stuff on the west, on this side of the building. And the artist that resided there lost about $1 million worth of artwork to the Columbia River. That bridge you see going over there from land over to the building, that's a retired AM radio antenna. Down the street to our right is the fire department and the police department for Astoria. And not to be outdone, we built a Starbucks to the right, and they just put a Safeway around it. Basin on the left. East Basin is a mooring for several of our larger fishing vessels. They don't have a lot of amenities. There's no power, I don't think, to this area, and no restrooms. However, it has a tourist attraction, and as soon as we get past this next kiosk, it will come into view. You'll see a dock out there with no boats attached to it for a good reason, and that's because the California sea lion likes to lounge around that dock. So yearly you can see the movement out there. That's California sea lions. They just came back a couple of weeks ago. They spent about 2 months down around California trying to woo the ladies, and these guys didn't make the grade, so they came back here. These are all males. We call them Astoria losers. You can walk out on that pier and get a closer look, but just keep in mind you can't really do it this time around because this is our last trip here. So up to 39th Street, which is just about 3 or 4 blocks up the way. we'll turn around and make a last run today. That silver boat you see on the left there, between the blue boat and the grayish fishing boat, that metal boat out there is an Army Corps of Engineers boat. It's got all kinds of instrumentation on it. And the main purpose of that boat is to maintain the channel depth. The channel depth has to be kept between 43 and 45 feet, so these ships do not run aground. If it gets less than that, the Army Corps of Engineers boat will identify it and the dredger will go out and take care of it. This white building up on our left that says Rogue and the CRPA is Columbia River Packers Association. That's the last cannery that's still standing. It's not active, but it is a free museum. You can go in there and roam around and see all the paraphernalia of the day. That boat you see there is one of the ferries that used to take folks back and forth from Oregon to Washington. We found that up around Tacoma, and they're revamping that boat and hopefully have some opportunity for tourist rides on it also. We're also going to turn around. This is our eastern, at the opposite direction.
Okay, so fell out of somebody's. Is this one of yours? No.
And Bob will give you some more information about Astoria. Thank
I
you.
think that's a good idea. What you said is a good idea.
Whatever, I'm down. We can get off there.
Hi gang, this is it. We will not be coming back this direction. We're going to put her away in the trolley barn as soon as we get back there. So just so you know that, where your car is parked or whatever it is. Okay, we're headed west. This is the same direction Lewis and Clark were headed in 18 and 5 when they landed over on the other side of the river. That's the state of Washington over there. I only mention that because I've had people ask me if it's Canada. That's where Lewis and Clark were. There's a little cutout over there. It was a terrible day, the day they got here. In 18 and 5, it was November. It was raining sideways. There were white caps on the river. They were swamping their canoes. They were out of food. Their clothes were rotting off them, and a bunch of them were sick.
What?
Many of you may have had vacations like that. So, anyway, it didn't work out real well, and they had to put in somewhere out there because as I say, they were swamping their canoes. So, they put in this little cutout over there. And they spent 6 days in there. Captain Clark read his diary. We spent 6 days in this dismal niche. And if you go across that bridge up there, the Astoria Bridge, make a right turn when you get to the end. You can have a picnic at the dismal niche rest area. It's still there. It's got all kinds of really great signage and things like that for you. I'll tell you everything Lewis and Clark did up there. A lot of movies have been made here in Astoria. The Ring, Ring 2, Short Circuit, Free Willy, The Goonies. Everybody knows about The Goonies. But of course, Kindergarten Cop was also filmed here. Arnold Schwarzenegger in town for a while. If you saw that movie, you will recognize the building to your left up there on the hill. That is the John Jacob Astor Elementary School. That's where Kindergarten Cop was filmed. The playground equipment up there was donated to the kids from the cast and crew of Kindergarten Cop. Kindergarten Cop, of course, a movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger was a police detective who impersonated a police officer. I beg your pardon, he was a police officer who impersonated a kindergarten teacher. Later went on to impersonate the governor of California. And according to his ex-wife, he impersonated a husband. So she telling Willie to be free, jump over the rocks, Willie, go to freedom, Willie, all that. Remember that? Alright, take a look to your right here. See those rocks? That is not them. The actual rocks are in Hammond, Oregon, which is about 15 miles ahead of us up here. But we like to point those out because they look exactly like the ones that Willie jumped over up in Hammond. So you're going to see a lot of the Astoria Bridge as we travel on up toward our stop up here. The Astoria Bridge is kind of the signature of the city, if you will. It is 4.2 miles long from Oregon to Washington and from Washington to Oregon. When they started building the bridge in 1963, the locals called it the Bridge to Nowhere. Because frankly, even today, there's nothing on the other side. There's nothing over there. You have to go 6 miles either direction to see anything. And they said nobody would use it. Well, these days about 7,000 cars in the summertime go nowhere across that bridge every day. They also put a toll on it. It cost $24 million to build it. It costs more than that to maintain it per year now. they paid $24 million for it. They took out a 50-year bond. They said as soon as we pay it off, we will lift the $1.50 per car toll on the bridge. Nobody believed that. But in 1994, they did that very thing. They tore down the toll booths. It's a free ride back and forth across that bridge as many times a day as you want to go. The bridge is closed one time a year for only a few hours for something called the Great Columbia Crossing. It's a running and walking event. You get a t-shirt out of this. They take you over to Dismal Niche, turn you loose, let you run or walk back across the bridge. It's a timed event, as I said. They only give you so much time to do it. If you don't make it, no big deal. They'll come and get you in a bus. That's the good news. The bad news is it has a big sign on the side that says, "Bus of Shame."
Shame!
The bridge was completed, as I said, in 1966. August 27th of that year, the governor of Oregon and the governor of Washington met in the middle of the bridge, cut a ribbon, and it was officially open. Our ferry service went out of business that very day. Now, as you look up in the hills here to your left, you will see all these beautiful homes up here. Lots of really nice homes, but just killer views up there. That one with the red view, or red roof, that's where our former mayor used to live, or does. I guess he still lives there. He's just our former mayor. You see all those beautiful homes up there until you get right here. And you'll notice there's not a house up there. Well, there used to be. In 1952, there was a nice housing development. About 50 houses up there. And in March of that year, it started raining. It rained and rained and rained. It'll do that here. And everybody got up one morning and went to work. When they came home, they had a different address. Every house up there was at the bottom of the hill. A huge landslide, and the city fathers decided never to allow houses to be built up there again. And they have stuck to that. We're going to come to a stop up here at the Columbia River Maritime Museum. One of my favorite exhibits in there, if you get a chance to take a look at it. If you could remain in your seat until we come to a stop, please. It's kind of a safety thing. I appreciate that. There's a nice exhibit in there called War in the Pacific. There's all kinds of cool stuff in there from World War II. One of the things they have is the bridge from the World War II Navy destroyer. It weighed 13 tons. They brought it up here on a raft, a barge, I guess. And it weighed 13 tons. They put it up on the ground and they built the rest of the museum around it. And you can go in there and climb right up on the bridge of that World War II Navy destroyer and see things just the way the captain did during World War II. So as I said, we will be stopping here at the Columbia River Maritime Museum. We always do. This is one of our mandatory stops. We stop here going east and going west. So how many people are off here? Okay. You can get off on either end. Whichever is closest for you. We have to keep up with Portland. They have the Trailblazers and we have the Astoria Dolls.
Oh, that's an hour.
As we clear this building up here, if you look up to your left, you will see a blue building up there with the name on it. It's the Shawn Winery. The gentleman owns that. It's about 80 years old. It's a one-man operation. He loves to make wine in there. He loves to show it to people and give them tours through his winery. He's a very nice man. He makes wine out of everything except grapes. True story. On your left here, now the distribution center for Moe's Seafood and Chowder. Of course, you can, the buttons don't work, hon. Fingers up and down the coast of Oregon.
They make the chowder here.
Isn't that fantastic? I can't touch this. We're going to write this all the way as far as
something really fun. We're gonna go the long way on a one-way street.
40, 50, 40.
We can do that for two reasons. One, this is the direction the tracks go. And two, well, our motto is we're 43,000 pounds and you're not. So coming up next, up here on your left, will be 12th Street. And this is where our Sunday market is held. This actually tomorrow. If you happen to be here tomorrow, check out the Sunday market. It's fantastic. Live music, good food, food court, all kinds of handcrafts and things like that. On your left also here, 12th Street is where we were hit by a car once. The only place we've ever been hit by a car, right here. The woman came through the intersection and hit the trolley in the side. In her official police report, she stated that the trolley swerved and hit her. This will be 11th Street right here. This is about the center of town. If you're looking to look through town or check out our galleries or things like that, wine shops, this is about the center of the city. Anyone off here? All right. You may or may not know, Astoria is the oldest permanent American settlement west of the Rocky Mountains. We have a lot of history here. And back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, this was a very rough and tumble place. There were itinerant workers and sailors walking up and down here. There were a lot of fights. Lots of bad things going on. The Oregonian newspaper called Astoria the wickedest place on earth. There were more bars per capita here than any other city in the United States. And where you are now is called it was called Swill Town. This was the red light district. Over there on your left, this green building that you're looking at over there. The ornate windows on top. The bottom half of that was a hardware store, and the upper half was not a hardware store. There were women that worked up there. They on the county tax rolls, they were referred to as seamstresses when they had other skills. So, Louis Beer on your right. We've been here for about 4 years. Moved into an old shellfish processing plant. They had a good glass of beer in there. They won several awards for the beer since they've been in there. They got a hole in the floor with plexiglass over it. You can look down through there and see sea lions taking a nap. We're going to stop up here at our 6th Street viewing platform for those that would like to exit. You're okay up front, sir. Thank you for riding with us. Time you've been on the trolley, you have been on a trestle. The trestle was filled in beneath many years ago. And in fact, about 1923, when they started rebuilding Astoria after the Great Fire of 22. This trestle used to be part of the longest trestle system in the world. It started at Ton Point behind us here and goes clear out over the Pacific Ocean. But this has all been filled in underneath. These are the Columbia House condominiums on your right here. They were built in 1973 when the economy was terrible and the interest rate was 19%. And the guy that owned them couldn't sell them, so he auctioned them off, and you could pick one up for about $35,000. Nowadays, you're looking at about $350,000, and there's a waiting list.
Wow. And how much are the homes?
The object you see here is the boiler from an old steamship that ran aground not far from here about 100 years ago. They put the boiler, because it was still working, in the Van Camp cannery. That's what sat here at the time. And the cannery burned down. But the boiler stays. It is on the National Register of Historic Places.
So it ran around the steamship.
I noticed some of you taking pictures of it. You'll be happy to know that it is the third most photographed object in the city of Astoria, we are told. I don't know how they know that, but that's what they tell us. The structure on your right here is part of what used to be a cannery. They actually had, they soldered the tin cans together in there with an open flame. And they did it in there so that the flames wouldn't come out on the wooden floor and burn the place down. It did burn down, but not for that reason. Nowadays, it's a condominium for seagulls. The houses you see up in the hills there were built mostly by fitting. And you'll notice most of those houses up there have very steep slants on their roof. That is because in Finland they get a whole bunch of snow, and they need that snow to slide off the roof. Here, we hardly get any. But a blueprint's a blueprint. That's the way they built them, so that's the way they built them. A lot of those houses were brought here, actually bought in the Sears and Roebuck catalog. They were brought to town on the very rails you're riding on. As a kid, they had instructions with them and everything, kind of like IKEA, if you will. IKEA, of course, is a Swedish word, meaning 30 bucks says you'll never put this thing together. Here comes Astoria's sandy beach on your right. This is it. Seaside's got nothing on us. This is our sandy beach right here. That's it. 40 feet of it. Very proud of that. That is, by the way, a clothing optional beach. Only in the months of January and February. The building out over the river there is the Cannery Pier Hotel and Spa. It is a 1/3 replica of the Union Cannery. That the cannery are still around it.
I don't know what our spots
It is a boutique hotel, which means it doesn't have a restaurant in it. But they have a fleet of classic cars. They'll give you a ride to any restaurant you want to go to. This building on your right here was the machine shop for that cannery. Now it holds the Bridgewater Bistro restaurant, which is an excellent restaurant, and some offices and things like that are in there. They have beautiful, if you're into woodworking or anything, you got to go in there and look at the wood floors. Those are the original wood floors. So our next stop here is the last stop of the